my students. I'm here today to tell you all about calligraphy. So we've already watched a few videos about it, but I thought I would tell you about the tools you have with you at home. All of you have one of these pens, and the gray part is called the handle, and the front part, the little silvery part, is called the nib. And these nibs can come out of the pen, so that if you buy a set, you can buy one handle, but then buy different tips of different sizes. And you can see that little curvy part fits right in. And you want to make sure it's in firmly because you don't want to have it like inky and then fall on your calligraphy work. I'm hoping you can see this really well. What I want you to notice is that your pen has a silvery part and it has kind of a golden part. And the golden part will usually have a number on it. Mine right now says C1. This one says C0. The C refers to calligraphy and the number refers to the size, so that you can see that the 0 is slightly larger than the 1, and they reduce in size as they go up in number. What you'll also notice is that if you are a left-hander, sometimes the pen itself will say left-handed and then say the size, but I believe that I've given all of my lefties a flat 1/4 inch pen that can be used either way. So your pen might look slightly different. Don't be alarmed. What you'll notice about this pen is, if you look very closely, you'll see that there are little separate lines in the pen, making separate tines, like the tines on a fork, except there's no space. What that does is it allows the ink to flow down to the tip of the pen. You'll also notice that there is a space between this golden part and the silver part. That is the reservoir that's going to fill up with ink. So when you dip it into your ink, you want to fill it and dip it right about to this little curve in the metal. That way it's going to fill up with ink and it's going to spread downward through those two layers. If those two layers become separated, the ink no longer flows and your nib is broken. So usually every year I'll have to go through and find ones that don't fit or are not working anymore. You will always want to hold the pen so that the gold part is facing upward. You can see that the silver part is longer than the gold part, so that allows the ink to flow. If you have your pen this way, sometimes what happens is the silver part catches on the paper and it opens up and goes against that gold part and you get a spatter. So if you have a spatter, it's probably because you're holding your pen wrong or that you're going from bottom to top. With calligraphy, we are always going to start at the top and pull our letters from the top down and most often from left to right. This is why calligraphy is sometimes more challenging for left-handers, because as you all know, when you're writing, we pull our pen this way and the ink is over here, but our left-handers will write and then sometimes their hand is in that inky area and it can smudge. So left-handers, you might have to adjust how you hold your paper and how you hold your pen. It's very individual. Let's talk about making lines with the pen. First of all, you always want to hold it at a 40-degree angle. So this will help you. This is on your page, and if you hold your pen tip like that, you are going to know you're holding it correctly. If you're holding it this way, it is incorrect. If you're holding it vertical, it is incorrect. You must hold it so that this flat wedge is even with this. And what that's going to allow you to do, it's going to allow you to get the very thin and thick lines. I didn't quite get enough ink there. Sometimes when I first dip in, my first mark I will make on scrap paper because it's usually very wet and sometimes it's blobby. So to practice your pen angles, what I sometimes like to do first is go from thin to thick, and you can make these thin to thick marks, and that just helps practice making those beautiful calligraphic lines. So you can see that the drier the pen gets, the finer your lines can be. And that's what we want to see. We want to see this thin to thick, all in one gorgeous line. And that's going to make our letters look really beautiful. Now let's talk a little bit about the proportion that we're going to do our letters. Every time we start with a calligraphy hand, or a font, you might want to call it, we are always going to do a little ladder on our page. This little ladder shows us the proportion of the letters. So for the foundational hand, we make a ladder 10 nib widths high. So I'm using the width of this nib as my measurement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so we just match them up. I've also seen people make them where they look like a little staircase. So you might see them that way sometimes too, but that takes up more room on your paper. Oh, I'm just making sure you kids can see. So what's going to happen is our lowercase letters, or our minuscule letters, are the height of 4 widths of our pen. So we have these special marks on our paper, and you will have these on your paper at home already because it's so much easier to start when this is done. So what's going to happen is our lowercase letters, the body of them, are going to fit right into that space there. So the proper proportion of them is 4 widths high. Then we have this area in the top for letters that have ascenders, like a B or an F or an H. And we have this space down here for descending letters like Y or G or, what else? PQ. Gosh, kids, I forgot my letters for a minute. So that's what we're going to use. We're going to use this little ladder to help us with our letter size, to make them the appropriate size. Now, some alphabets have a very different proportion. They might have a taller letter with smaller ascenders and descenders, or they might have a really small letter with really big ascenders and descenders. That's what makes the letters look visually different. So you will all have a paper to work from, and I've made myself one here. Let me make sure you can see again. So sometimes I have found that when calligraphers first start out, all of these lines can be very, very overwhelming for them. So sometimes what I do is I have kids lightly shade in the spaces between where our different calligraphy groups are going to be. So maybe you will want to take a pen and do some light cross hatching. Or, you know what else you might like to do? You might want to just have an extra piece of paper so that you only have one line grouping at a time, whatever works for you. I also recommend penciling in your letters first. So when I first look at my alphabet, we're going to start today with the minuscule letters, or we would call them the lowercase letters. That name didn't come about until Gutenberg invented the printing press, and then there were printing cases, and it actually got named after the case. So the minuscule letters are fitting right in this space right here. So it might help you to pencil them in where they are going to be. Now, if you pencil them in, you can make sure they're accurate and you won't have to redo them as long as you check. But if you feel like you might want to do it right with the ink, you can too. If you pencil, leave a little extra space, because I'm drawing this right now with a really thin pencil line, but I know that when I do these in calligraphy, they're going to get much fatter and darker and take up more space. Sometimes what happens when you're doing calligraphy is your right mind and your left mind kind of separate, and you're so busy looking and concentrating on making your letters beautiful that you might spell things incorrectly if you don't pencil them in first. One time I spelled my own name wrong. That's crazy. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how we're going to do our letters. Let's talk about the ink. I'm using some beautiful Winsor & Newton violet ink. You all have Higgins ink, and it is permanent, kids. You do not want to spill. You want to work on a surface that is strong. Some of you will have that little ink top that has the squeezy thing on it. If you do, sometimes what I do with that top is I make a little crumpled up piece of newspaper or paper towel, and then I set the top in it because you don't want it to roll off into your lap and stain your clothing or your precious, precious sneakers. Even if Keegan's are only $100 sneakers, not $500 sneakers, he doesn't want them to get ruined. And then, if you are a right-hander, have your ink over on the right-hand side. If you're a left-hander, have your ink on the left-hand side, whatever's easier. And whatever you do, never ever leave your pen sitting in the ink bottle, because I can guarantee you that sooner or later, your arm will knock it and your whole bottle of ink will spill. Kids, I've seen many things ruined over the years from ink. Backpacks, sweatshirts, sneakers, clothing. Sometimes kids, it's actually good that you're doing it at home because nobody's going to spill on anybody else. You're only going to spill on yourselves. And hopefully you won't. And kids, beware of cats. Cats like to get right up here. Someday I'm going to show you this beautiful medieval manuscript that has a cat footprint in ink on it. So let's get busy doing our minuscule letters, and I'm going to show you a few things about them. You'll notice on your handouts that there are little direction strokes because each letter is made out of several different strokes where we're going to pick up our hand in between and then place it again. Holy moly, I'm just making sure you can see. Sorry kids, it was a little jiggly. This is why I'm not a professional YouTuber, right there. So with our A, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my little scrap piece because sometimes I do like to just get all the extra ink off. I like to make sure there's enough, and I've never used this ink before. So you can see it's really dark and wet when it comes out. So for our A, our first stroke is going to start a little bit below this X height line, and I'm going to pull it up and down and up again. And that's going to give me that thin, thick, thin. It's a little blobby right there. Then I'm going to pull across a really thin line and down and curve it up. And that is our A. Mine looks a little fatter than the one on the page. I think I'll do another, kids. So sometimes when you're doing calligraphy, you might not like the first one. You might want to do 2 or 3 till you feel like you've gotten it. So I'm going to do another one again. I'm going to start below that. Down, up again. We want to pull up to get that beautiful serif. I'm going to start a little lower here. Down. I'm happier with that one. Now you'll find that you might be able to get, I don't know, like 3 or 4 letters, maybe more, before your ink pen starts to run dry and you have to re-dip it. And you'll see your ink will start darker and get a little lighter. Then when you dip again, it'll be darker and lighter. And that's a beautiful characteristic of hand-drawn calligraphy. Let's look at our B. Our B is really straight up and down. All of the letters in this foundational alphabet are perfectly vertical letters. And that is a characteristic of this hand. So we're going to start a little bit below the ascender height. That was a little thick. I'm going to do it again. And then we're going to pull our line down and over a little bit. So that's stroke number 1. Then we go right here and up a little bit, and we come around and meet it. Now sometimes meeting those lines, when you have to make them meet together, is a little challenging. Sometimes they will separate a little bit. Now you'll notice that up here on our serif, on our B, it's a little thicker. What we do to get that, we go back, we can make a line there. Then we're going to fill in that little space right there. So again, I'm going to make a little line and then fill in that little space, and it gives us that beautiful serif. Let's do a C, kids. Does this remind you of kindergarten when you had to practice on that paper? So our C starts a little bit below the X height line. Oh, that was blobby. I forgot to deblob. Let me blob. I'm sure that's not a real term. Okay, we're going to start a little bit here. And we're going to go up, and then we're going to meet, and we're going to go over there. It's just kind of an arching curve. Let me do another one. Yeah, I'm happier with that one. So kids, these things are called blots. And remember, we studied flourishes already, so I always think of Harry Potter. The pen and ink store was called Flourish and Blots. That will help you remember these terms. Okay, I'm going to deblot. Now let's look at our D. We finally have one that has 3 different movements, and we're going to start with this little curvy line first, right below the X height line. We're going to do this little curve there and come up. Then we're going to do that one right there. So it's kind of like making the C again, really. Then we get a perfect vertical, and we go up right there to get our serif. Then we go back, get our little line, and fill that in. Let's do that again. Curve that around, and there, and then we get our vertical. So it might take you some time. I feel like my first verticals were not so vertical, so that's why we're practicing. We fill that in. I like the D. Now let's do our little E. It's just such a nice, easy letter. Now I'm trying to fit my letters pretty close together so that you can get a lot on a page. I like the E. I'm going to do another one. I like the sound that the calligraphy pen makes. I have to do another E. I think I could spend all day making E's. Actually, that would be a really pretty border around something, just that kind of curly shape. That would be very nice. Now we're going to do our F. Our F is a really beautiful letter, and it has a serif on the bottom. It's the first one with a little fancy bottom. So we're going to start up here below the ascender line, and we're going to pull this line down straight. And when we get near the baseline, we're going to pull a little bit to the left and then over a little bit. Mine kind of ends up with more of a shape that's just, I don't know if it needed to, I'm going to do another one. I think I needed to pull over closer there. That's a little better. And then we have this big arcing shape there. And then for our crossbar, I usually go right below the X height line, you can see. And we'll see a little bit of that diagonal by how we're holding our pen. Maybe it should have been more like that. And then you can see that 40-degree angle on that line. That was a little too curvy, maybe. Let's do another one. Let me deblob. Oh, I like that better. And then a crossbar. Now let's do the G. What I want you to notice about the G is the little curvy shape does not sit on the baseline. It hovers a little bit above. Otherwise, your proportions will look really funny. But there's a lot going on with the G. So we start with that little line. See how it hovers above the baseline? Then we come over here and meet up with its curve, and then we go vroom, and it goes all the way over. Then we meet up with it, and then we give it this little serif right there. I have to do another one. I enjoy making G's. I feel like that one might have been too large. Let me deblob a little. Okay. So I'm going to start here with my curve. Then I'm going to come back and meet and curve in. Ooh, I got a little out of control. I went below my line. It should really sit right above that line. I like the G's. Okay, let's do an H. The H starts out with a nice vertical line. And we're going to pull up that beautiful serif. Actually, maybe it wasn't that much. Sometimes I get carried away. That's better. And then we're going to go back in and fill in that little thickness. And then we have this lovely, there we have more of a serif. Oh, I have to do another one. And then I'm going to fill that in. Now our eye is really tiny, and of course it fits within that X space. We're going to pull this down and pull up our serif. And then we fill that little thick part in, and then we have a little dot above our eye. Sometimes it's called a tittle, T-I-T-T-L-E. Some fonts have them, and some don't. Remember we were talking about the Book of Kells and the hand called Minuscule. That one doesn't use dots above the I or J at all. Let's do the J now. So the J starts out, and we're going to pull it down to our descending area and curve it a little. And then we're going to have a little serif shape and come back and meet. Sometimes meeting up is the hard part. And then we have another little, looks like a little comma shape. I have to do another one. That one got a little thick. Beautiful. Oh, I love the K. So we're going to start up high, right below our ascending line. I'm going to do a little thin line and then pull down a nice vertical, do a tiny serif. Then we've got a lot to fit in here. There's a curve. I just love these curvy shapes. So it curves up and then down. It kind of looks like an R. And then we fill that in. I have to do another one. I like that one better. And I'm going to fix my serif. Now our L is kind of like the I. Has that lovely curve. And then we're going to do our serif. The M is a little bit more complicated because we want the negative space between each little curve to be even. But we're going to start in our X height. Just have a tiny serif. Then we go up and down and up and down and up. My pen missed a little bit right there. Now that doesn't look so great because see how it's so wide right there and it's skinny right there? This is why I might need more practice. Good thing I've got all day to do calligraphy. Here we go again. Up. I think the key is making it really vertical. It's a pretty wide letter. I'm happier with that. Now let's go to our N. If you've mastered the M, you'll have no trouble with the N. So we're going to go up and down and pull that over, up and down and up again. Now our O is a very round O. Depending on different hands, it can be more oval or very round, and ours is very round. I'm going to start and pull kind of a C shape. Then we want to meet up at this thin point, go around and meet up again. Sometimes the meeting of the two is the tough part. I have to do a few O's. That one's better, I think. So really, practice, a few of your letters. One time in class, I had a kindergarten teacher, and she did what she had her students do. Every time they would practice a letter, when they felt like they got the best one, they would put a little mark over the top. So she would do that with all her letters on the ones that she thought were the best. Now let's look at our P. Our P has a little bottom serif, very similar to how our F looked. So we're going to start below the excite line and pull a nice vertical down. Oh, that was a little blobby. And when we get near the bottom, we're going to go to the left, then back to the right. So we're going up, we're pulling down to the left, then over to the right. Then we're going to do the top part of our curvy P, and then we meet up with the bottom part. And I feel like that was a little high right there. I'm going to do another one. I'm happy with that one. Our Q is kind of like a reverse P. So we're going to start with our curvy part there. Kind of has that little shape. And then we're going to pull it down and do that little serif. I think you're all going to like the little R. It goes up and down. It just fits right in that little middle space. And it has this really pretty line right there. So to get that, we go up and down and up again. I like making those shapes. Now, let's talk about the S. The S can be a little complicated to fit in and look straight. So I think if you have trouble with any of the letters, G and S are going to be the ones. So with our S, we're going to start with that middle curvy shape. We want to start below the excite line and kind of get a little start to the curve. It's almost like making that kind of shape, only vertical. And then we're going to meet up here, and then we're going to meet up there. So let's do another one. I'm going to do that much, and then meet up. It kind of has that pulling, arcing shape like the C did. Now here's what can happen. If your S does that, then it's going to look like it's leaning. So you really need to have that shape in the middle. Let me move that out of the way. Be rather even. Be rather vertical, I should say. So start way over on the right and then pull it to the left. You might even want to practice doing like several of those shapes first, and then practice meeting up on both sides. I like that. Let's do the little t. The lowercase t does not go all the way up to the ascender line like the D and the H do. It's very small, so it just starts just above the excite line, and we pull down and we get that beautiful thin serif. Then we pull over there and we pull the crossbar. Let's do that again. So we're starting here, and we pull like that. You could do it this way too. You could do your crossbar, then just fill in there. Beautiful. I have to do another one. I guess I like to move it over and then do my crossbar. Let's go to the U. The U is nice. It's like the N, only upside down. So we've got those beautiful little serifs happening. Lovely. And the V is also nice. I do that kind of line, and then we come back over here and go that way. Meet up with it. I kind of give myself a little bit to meet up with. Let's talk about the W next. The W, we're going to do it this way. We're going to go up, pull down, kind of like the V, but then our second stroke is right here. We're going to go up and pull down. Then we can meet up with that one. Oh, I didn't meet up. See that? Fail. And we meet up with there. Let me do another W. So we're going to do that. We want to have that same kind of beautiful angle. We're going to meet up there and meet up there. Ooh, I like the W. Nice. Let's do an X. The X is the only one that we kind of pull a little bit kind of to the left. It's got a little serif like that. We go to the left. We've got a little serif there. That one looks a little crooked. Let me try again. I don't know. I guess X's are my challenge. Now let's do a Y. And then we're going to do this and kind of pull down to that descender, get a little serif, and meet back up again. And then our Z is all one movement. It's the only letter that we don't pick up from. So we start right or left to right, down. Oh, I just love it. Whew, sometimes my Z's get a little crazy. I like the Z's. So I would say once you do your minuscule alphabet, what I would like you to do is write your name. So you're going to have to do one capital letter. And our capital letter is going to go up to that top line, the ascender. So I've been doing calligraphy for quite a while. So I don't have to look at the letters as much anymore. But I imagine that as you're doing yours, you're going to have to look at the letter examples because it's a whole new way of writing for you. So instead of just writing, it's really an art form. And you have to like visually make it look correct. Yes, kids, I think I will have you write your first and last names on your paper. And then, for our next lesson tomorrow, we will do our capital letters. If you happen to use up all of the paper I sent home, you can always make your own by drawing the ladder and then taking lines. The ascender and descender area has 3 nib widths and the body has 4. So kiddos, that is our lesson for the day, and I look forward to seeing your alphabets. Goodbye, everybody.